So we're conscious of what our employer brand is. Who does it resonate with? I want them to be able to celebrate the Argentinian National Day with their family and their friends in the same way that everybody else is. And I want to show that.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great time. I'm certainly very happy to be here. I'm currently living in the United Kingdom, and I haven't seen the sun in about 10 months. So it is still blue, and the sky's still there, which is fantastic. So as I said, my name's Duncan Macintosh. I'm one of the co-founders of Shield Geo, and this elegantly dressed young man here is my co-founder, Tim Burgess. And we're here today to talk about simplifying the bureaucracy of hiring international remote workers. Now, what we mean by that is, how do you employ, contract, or otherwise engage your remote staff? And the takeaways we'd love you to take away from this session are, firstly, we'd like you to understand your options. Now, we're not here to preach and tell you how you're supposed to do it. We're just here to tell you what your options are, and then you guys can make a decision about how you want to do it yourselves. We'd like you to clarify your HR principles, and what we'd love you to do is to start doing something you're not already doing, stop doing something that you are doing that probably isn't the right way to go about things, and do more of what you are doing that's right. Now, what I'm going to do is quickly introduce who we are and as a company. We are ShieldGeo, as we mentioned, and we provide a global employer of record service. So what that means is we employ and payroll our client staff on their behalf in countries where they don't have an entity. So just to give you a quick example, if you've got a US tech company who wants to employ somebody in Japan and they don't have their own entity in Japan, and they want this person fully employed on a local employment contract, they want them to be payrolled, and they want all of the admin tasks to be taken care of and someone to be responsible for the HR, then they'll engage a company like ours. So what we do is, obviously, as I said, we employ people on behalf of our clients around the world. We're currently employing actually 475 people as of yesterday for our clients around the world in over 60 countries. Now, we're not actually here to talk about how we service our clients and how we go about that. What we're actually here to do is to talk about how we've gone about it as a company internally. We not only support our clients' remote staff, but we actually do the same thing ourselves. So we employ 33 people internally around the world, in 9 countries, 75% of which are remote. So what we're planning on doing today is to walk you through how we've gone about deciding how we're going to engage our employees. This is a picture of our team. So this is our team, obviously, as I said, 75% of whom are remote. It's a photo taken at our most recent retreat in Thailand. Now, as a company, we've had a series of values that we've been conducting our business by over the last, 4 or 5 years. Now, we've recently crystallized them into a set of values, which I think everybody here has probably gone through recently. Now, what we do is we try to conduct ourselves according to these values across everything that we do, which also includes how we engage and hire our own staff. So when we say we want to be human, we're employing human beings. We want to treat them with empathy and treat them as people. We try to do the right thing. Our business is based upon compliance. So we want to ensure that everything that we do is compliant with local labour and payroll legislation in the countries in which we're engaging our employees. We want to grow as a company, so when we're hiring and engaging people locally, we want to learn all the lessons from every mistake that we've made and then own it. So we take responsibility for the decisions we've made. We're not expecting our local hires, our local employees in all these countries to understand the local legislation. We're going to make the decisions, and we're going to stand by those decisions and be responsible for them. As I said, we're going to conduct this from the prism of how we've gone about it, the objectives we've had when we're looking to do something like hiring, and the process we've gone through when we're doing that, and the decisions we've made. So I'm going to introduce every one of these topics. Tim's not just going to stand here as a male model. He's actually going to get involved. So we're going to go through hiring, employment models, compensation, benefits and allowances, leave, termination, and the future. So first up, we're looking at hiring. So when we're looking to hire somebody, or when we've looked at hiring people, what we're looking to do is we're looking to take advantage, while we're here running remote, we're trying to hire people anywhere. We're trying to take advantage of the entire global labour market, like that wonderful video we had earlier on with Fahim. We're looking to take advantage of being able to employ people anywhere, and especially looking at overlooked people. For example, women re-entering the workplace after they've had their first kid, often they get overlooked by the normal hiring models. And then obviously we're a bootstrap company, so we try to leverage lower cost regions and lower cost opportunities. We want to take advantage of that opportunity. So Tim's now going to talk about how we went about that.
So as Duncan pointed out, for us, we have to be conscious of the sort of business we are. So we're a bootstrap business. We don't have venture capital funding. We're not incredibly profitable. And so we have to play to our strengths. We can't just throw a ton of money at somebody and think that we're going to be able to hire them. So we're conscious of what our employer brand is. Who does it resonate with? We hire internationally. So we're a great employer for people who are in countries where they mightn't have good opportunities, or for people who are in rural or regional areas where they mightn't have great local opportunities. We think we're pretty fair. We think we give people a great opportunity to prove themselves. So that works well with people who haven't had a great employment experience, or perhaps have been not recognised properly for the talents that they have in the work that they do. And so we try and tailor our hiring process. We try and tailor our employment experience to appeal to those people. We feel like if we can work with those people, we've got a big enough talent pool that we can draw from, and we find that they're very engaged if we can successfully hire them. On a related note, we try and be very specific about what we're looking for. So this doesn't just mean that we're looking at particular technical skills. It means that there are certain characteristics that we want to see in people. For example, communication is very important to us. Empathy is very important to us. People who have a great degree of self-motivation and ownership of their work. Ownership is one of our values. We make sure that we filter and assess for those characteristics. And we do that through a multiple-step hiring process. So we make people fill in some forms and give us write some questions out, because we want to see that they've got great written communication, because communication is important to us. We want to see what sort of characteristics they value, because we want to see whether they value empathy. Empathy is important to us. We ask them to do a technical interview. We ask them to do a values alignment interview. We give them a work test. We follow that up with a call where we give them feedback on that work. And all of these steps are designed to help us and our applicants understand if we've got a good fit, whether we can be successful working together. Now, one of the other things that we do, which might run a little counterintuitively, it certainly wasn't something we knew immediately when we started the business, is when we do hire someone and we're onboarding and training them, we only focus on accuracy, never speed. Now, the temptation when you hire somebody is, how can I get this person productive as quickly as possible? I want to get a return on the investment that I've made. I want this person to be a productive member of the team. And what we find is if we encourage that behaviour, then we'll often skip steps. It means that the knowledge that we give them might not be as embedded as we would like. So when we focus on accuracy, when we try and deliberately move slowly, what we're trying to do is prepare that person for the situation that Andreas talked about before, which is you're by yourself, you're blocked, there's nobody else in your team or in your time zone working right now. Do you know what to do? And the way that we get that result is by moving really slowly and making sure they really understand what it is that we're doing and what it is that we want them to do. And because of that, we also make sure we have a long probation period, because we want to be able to make a very balanced judgment on whether this person's going to be a good hire for us or not. We want to take our time making that assessment. So it doesn't make sense for us to say, hey, we're going to give you like a really short probation period and we're going to take ages training you. Yeah, short probation period, taking ages training you, it means that we've got to make a snap decision. If we do a long probation period and we take our time training, then it means we've got plenty of time to be able to make a decision for both sides. Now Duncan's going to talk about employment models.
Okay, so employment models, which is really the crux of what we do. Now again, I'm just going to reiterate it. These are the options that we know that are available, and we are not trying to tell you how to do it. We're just telling you that in order of the sequential order, these are the options that are most appealing to us as a company internally. So we want to keep it, our objective has always been to keep it simple and keep it compliant. So first up is to incorporate and employ directly. Now, a lot of you would know that that's not always possible, but if you can do it, it's the best option for us as a company and for the employee. We can control the linear from top to tail, and they'll have a better experience. But it's not always possible. You can't set up, we've got 9 different countries. We're not going to set up 9 different entities. We've got one person in Argentina. We're not going to set up a company in Argentina, and how difficult that is just to employ one person. So what do we do if that's not a possibility? So what we do is we look to a third party. Now, we're in the employer of record business, so obviously this is second nature to us, and we've got an enormous partner network. So what we do is we'll utilise that partner network and employ someone through them. So use them through a third-party employment model. Now, the third option, and it's not one that we're particularly keen on, but if we're employing someone for a short period of time, there's nothing wrong with using an independent contractor model, which basically means we'll engage with that individual through their limited company, or through, they might be self-employed and we can just set up a contract with them and they take responsibility for the tax. And there's no employment issues for such a short-term engagement, and there's no issues around the labour responsibilities. But if it's any longer than 6 months, then it can become tricky, so we try not to do it, but if in doubt, that's what we can do. And then the fourth option, which is something we'd never do, I know a lot of companies do it, is employing through your own HQ. You're a US company, you try and employ someone in Mexico through your US entity. It's not really feasible. It is possible in Europe, but that's an anomaly because you can set up as a foreign employer in Europe. Now, Tim's going to go through exactly how the decisions we've made and why we've made it.
So just to cover this issue of employee-contractor, it's a pretty common debate. I got dragged into it last night. It's a thorny issue, right? So as Duncan said, we're not here to say what's right and wrong, just what we've decided. And so for us, we value compliance. And we feel that the employee model is more compliant. We also value having a reduced burden on our employees. We don't want our employees to have to worry about their tax, their social security contributions, doing a company return and filing their accounts and all that stuff. We think the employer should handle that. And so we understand that if we're going to optimize for compliance and we're going to optimize for a reduced worker burden, we're actually also going to pay a higher cost. It's going to take us longer to get them set up. It's going to take more admin time. And it's a bigger commitment. That's a decision that we've made. We're happy to take that burden because of the benefits that we think it delivers to us. Now, having said that, we're not zealots about it. So we actually use a mix. And this is sort of how we decide which model we're going to use and when. So we use contractors if it's short-term, if it's a low-risk country, and once or twice we've used them just because the person's insisted on being engaged that way, and then we've tried to move them off that model over time. We use third-party employment where we've got a small employee population. So one person in Argentina, we use an employer of record. We've got, I think, 6 people now in the US. We're using an employer of record, but that tends to be our tipping point to where we think about, are we going to incorporate? So for us, if we get to 5 or more employees in a location, then we start to think, we're pretty committed to this place. We've got some good workers here. We're paying quite a lot of fees. Is it going to be easier and better for us to incorporate? And the big advantage that we have when we incorporate is it means we can engage our workers exactly as we want. The employment contracts are written in the way that we want. They include the terms that we want. We can reimburse expenses in the way that we want to. We can offer the benefits and allowances that we want to do. And so that's why, ultimately, that's the model that we like. And you can sort of tell here by the vendors. If you've got contractors, what vendors do you need? You need someone to make a bank transfer. If you're doing third-party employment, okay, you'll probably need an employer record service. And where we've got direct employees, so at the moment we've got entities in Hong Kong, UK, and Australia. We're Australian. Duncan lives in the UK. I was there for a long time, and we know Hong Kong very well. So we're lucky in those countries. We don't have to operate with a huge amount of machinery. We've got an accountant, we've got HR advisory, we get a little bit of immigration help in Australia when we need to sponsor visas. But when we're looking, for example, at the US, we've got to throw in a lawyer, we've got to throw in an incorporation specialist, we've got to register in each state where we've got employees. It can start to get painful.
Okay, compensation, which we mean by salary. When we've looked at this as a notion, obviously it's difficult. We've got people spread around the world, as you guys do, and it's different, and the expectations are different in every country. So what we do is we try to be fair and we try to be competitive. So we try to localise pay and entitlements. So we want to give the guys who are employed in a particular role the same sort of salary that same or better that they'd get if they're doing the same role for a local company. We want to be as competitive in as many markets as possible. I think one of the earlier speakers were talking about, got a question on that exact subject matter. How do you set your salaries across a number of different countries? It's difficult, so we try to be as competitive as possible. And then what we do is we try to be more generous. So we offer a Shield standard, and then we offer the statutory minimum. So we give them whatever is higher.
Yeah, so what that means is we want to pay based on local cost of living. Now, we don't have a formula that we use to do this. We're in the process of trying to develop one. We've looked at GitHub's formula. We've looked at Buffer's model. And I think they're great starting points. It makes a lot of sense to us. And we always pay in local currency. So that means, with one or two exceptions, we fix the salary in local currency because people are paying their rent, they're paying their mortgage, they're paying their bills, they're buying their groceries, they're paying for their car lease, always in local currency. And so we want to make sure that they have certainty about the amount of money they're going to get in their bank account and that they understand how much money they're going to be able to spend. We respect local standards. And so that means that for our folks in the Philippines, where you're meant to get a 13th month bonus, we try and accommodate that. For the folks we have in Mexico, you get paid a vacation, like leave loading when you go on holiday. And so we're making sure that we respect that because that's what people who work in those countries are accustomed to. We also try and utilize non-salary incentives. So as I talked about before, we don't have unlimited resources, right? We can't just throw piles of money. But what we can do is we can make a bit of effort to try to provide the sort of benefits that really resonate with our group and that attract the sort of people that we want. And what we often find is that the monetary value of those benefits is far outweighed by the engagement and the appreciation that you get from people once you recognize what their particular needs are. And so some of those things that we do is around flexible work, around leave, equipment, work locations. We'll cover this again I think in the next slide.
It is, yeah. Yeah, so as Tim alluded to, benefits and allowances. So what we've found as a company is that if you give someone a health and wellbeing allowance of $150, they seem to respond to that greater than they would do if you gave them a bonus, which is only one-off. It demonstrates it's not only the monetary value, but it's also, it shows that you care. And I think as a remote worker, and a lot of you guys probably are remote workers, you'd understand that. You want to be felt like you're part of the team and the people in the head office actually care about you. So our objective with benefits and allowances has been we want to be flexible and we want to be generous. So we utilise non-salary incentives like flexible work. We want to give people their own big screen and a really good laptop and other equipment, a desk space, maybe a co-working space if they want it. We want to allow them to work wherever they can, wherever they like. If they want to work at a coffee shop, they want to work by the beach. If they want to start at 9 and finish at 3, or start at 10 and finish at 8, or if they've got kids and they want to break for that period in the afternoon, we try to accommodate that. And then also we try to obviously accommodate local expectations. There is obviously cultural nuances around work and around allowances, and we try to take those into consideration whenever we make any of these decisions.
So these are some of the benefits that we currently offer. As Duncan pointed out, all the equipment that we think people could possibly need. And shout out, is there anyone from Balsamic here? I know they're a sponsor. We pinched this idea from Balsamic of the lamp. You know, a lot of people in Europe get not much sunlight. Duncan pointed out he's living in England, doesn't get much sunlight. We've got people who have to do video calls, and sometimes the screen's pretty dark. $25. We bought a lamp, we issued it to everybody. You can charge your phone on it. You can see people's faces when they're on a call. They can adjust the light settings so that so they can make it brighter when the sun goes down. Incredible bang for buck for a $25 benefit that we offer. Internet's super important, so we give a telecom allowance. We have a health and wellbeing allowance, which in the beginning was meant to cover health insurance or gym membership, because they were things that Duncan and I valued. And then we had some employees who didn't take it up. And when we dug into it, we had some folks who were still on their parents' health insurance. Some people don't want to go to the gym. And so we asked them, well, what sort of things do they like for their health and well-being? And turns out there was a lot of stuff, right? People are different. So now, for that benefit, anything that you can reasonably claim is contributing to your health and well-being, that's how you unlock the benefit. So people use it for Pilates classes, travel, paying off student loans, pet insurance. There's a whole range of stuff. We have all the statutory employer contributions. Flexible working hours is a big thing for us. Obviously, flexible work location, preaching to the choir here. But, as Duncan pointed out, flexible work location for us doesn't mean working from home. We have people who work in a co-located office. We have people who work in co-working spaces by themselves. We have people who work from home. And we have people who spread their time between all three of those options. And all of that is fine for us. All of that is great. It's a matter of giving people the environment where they're going to be the most productive, where they're going to get to balance what they want to do in life with the duties that they have at work. And then, because our group is pretty international, they love traveling, so we brought in a workcation allowance, which is $500 US, travel anywhere you want. You can spend up to $500, we'll reimburse it. You just have to take your laptop, take a photo, share it on Slack. And that's been a great way to drive engagement, great way to reward people and help them travel, which is something that they all love to do. And lastly, this is something we're playing around with at the moment, is a digital nomad program. It's tricky for us, right? Because we're big on compliance. We're worried about immigration. We're worried about tax. We're worried about residency. We're worried about employment regulations. So the idea of people just floating around, traveling from place to place, it makes us a little nervous. It's a difficult thing for us to sustain in front of our customers when we talk about how big we are on compliance. So what we're trying to do is work through that and identify, are there countries that we're happy for people to travel to for periods of time and circumstances, which we think can meet both those objectives. That they can do it in a way that we feel is compliant, but they can also have a digital nomad experience. Yeah, stay tuned for that. We've got a fair way to go. But one point I would make, particularly around flexibility, is study after study shows that, yeah, teleworking is a popular benefit. Remote working is something that people want. But when you think about teleworking, that means people being able to work from home some of the time, right? 70% of people in this Deloitte study want to be able to telework. But 86% of people want flexible schedule. So that's pretty much everybody. And if you're not offering people the opportunity to start work and finish work and take breaks in ways that they want, I would encourage you to rethink that. Because that, in our findings, is the single biggest thing that people value. It gives them the greatest control over being able to do what they want with their personal time and balancing that against earning a living.
Ironically that we're in Bali. Our employees think we're on holiday. So it's one of the things that when you're engaging your remote workers that we didn't think about. I don't know that you guys did. And having done a lot of remote work myself, I think I did it for about 9 years, is it's something that you don't take into consideration. Everybody, like him, thought I was on holiday the whole time, and in actual fact, I didn't get a day off for a whole period of time. So when we're employing remote staff, the primary objective is to encourage everyone to take regular holidays. I think it's really important. It's not just important for your host team in your office, it's important for everybody to take them. So we try to encourage everyone to take holidays. We want to acknowledge local holidays. We can't, we've got a lot of US clients. They just want to recognise the US public holidays and the zero vacation that US nationals get as a vacation allowance. In Europe, people are expecting 25 days a year. We respect that. And if they've got 11 public holidays, that's what we're going to give them. And then we want to be able to provide them with flexible leave, to be able to go on holiday whenever they want, as long as it doesn't obviously affect the operation of the company.
So what does that look like? It's pretty simple. We have our policy, which is 20 days. If the country that they're working in offers more than 20 days annual leave, then that's what they get. So it's always the greater of our policy or the local entitlement. Sick leave, 10 days paid sick leave, and that can be I'm sick, it can be carer's leave, it can be mental health. You don't have to justify it. They're just days that you can take. Again, those days are local requirement. And then all local paid public holidays. And now this is a topic that gets debated a little bit, but the way that we view it is if I'm employing somebody in Argentina, I want them to be able to celebrate the Argentinian National Day with their family and their friends in the same way that everybody else is. And I want to show that we as an employer respect the fact that they're an Argentinian person in Argentina and that's their local custom. So we always try and respect those local days. The fun one, termination.
Yeah, the ugly topic. Now, it doesn't really matter how you're engaging your employees as contractors or you're employing them full-time through your own local entity or through a third party. This is a subject you're going to have to broach. Now, what our objective has always been is try to be clear and fair up front. There's no point being clear and fair at the end when you're terminating somebody or when they're terminating. So we don't want any surprises. We want them to know what's coming if it ever comes to this point where we're going to terminate, and we want to know what that's going to look like. And obviously, given what we do, we not only believe, but we insist upon full compliance with the local labour law.
And so what we're aiming for with a termination, and to be honest, a lot of this learning has come from the work we do with our clients, because we terminate a lot more of their employees, given we're managing 450 or 475, than we terminate of ours, given we've only got 33. And so we've seen what happens when it goes well, we've seen what happens when it goes badly, and we've tried to work out a good path in the middle. Super important is performance improvement plans. So when we talk about no surprises, nobody is ever going to have their employment terminated at our company and have it be a surprise. They're going to know what it is that we need them to do. They're going to know what support we're offering them in order to be able to do that. And they're going to know what time frame they have in order to be able to meet those objectives. And then if it doesn't work, if they aren't able to get to that point, then what we're aiming for is mutual agreement as opposed to termination for performance. Now the difference there is there's less risk, right? If you terminate someone for performance, you can get a claim for unfair dismissal. They can go to a local labour tribunal. Every country we deal with, literally every country we deal with, whenever we talk about termination, they say, oh, this country's not like everywhere else. Here, it's really in favour of the employees. It's in favour of the employees everywhere. The way that we can resolve that is by coming to a mutually agreeable outcome. And if anyone wants to know more about that, come up and talk to me afterwards. There's a whole lot of information that we can share about that. But the main thing to think about in this situation is, and for us, when we talk about being human, we want to preserve the dignity of the people. So if we're going to let somebody go, that's somebody who we hired, somebody who we believed in, somebody who we thought was going to do a great job. And as it works out, it's not a great fit, right? They're not able to do the job that we need. It doesn't make them a bad person. They've still got to get on with their life. They've got to get another job. They've got to move on with their career. And so we see our role as being, how can we facilitate that? How can we find a way for us both to move on separately, but preserving dignity in the process?
Okay, so now we've gone through all of your options. Irrespective of the route you're going to take, you're going to have to find local providers unless you're an expert in setting up entities or running payroll in all of these different countries that you're going to work in. So if you're going to set up your own company, you're going to have to look at finding an entity establishment company. You're going to need local tax, personal and corporation. Everybody's had to probably deal with permanent establishment issues. You're going to need a legal advisor. You'll need someone to transfer, an ability to transfer payments and payroll your local employees. So you'll need a payroll provider, and then you're going to need local HR advice. That's if you do it yourself. If you're going to go through a company, like ours or any one of our competitors, then you can outsource most of that, but you're still going to have to assess the company you're going to use irrespective. And then maybe if you're just going to engage them as a contractor, you're going to have to, at the very least, look at tax and HR legislation. Just because you're employing a contractor doesn't absolve yourself of the responsibilities of the local labour law. Sometimes that would be considered deemed employment, for instance. So there is a whole process to going through this.
So we're getting close to the end, so we'll run through this pretty quickly. But these are some of the learnings that we have in terms of assessing providers. Huge one for us is, do we know the charges up front? There is nothing worse than engaging an accountant or a lawyer and getting a quote. It's going to cost you like $3,000, okay. And then you find out that actually that was an estimate based on hours, and they charge $500 an hour. And they said it was going to take 6 hours, but no, it's actually going to take 12. So make sure you know what you're getting charged for. I always like to ask some questions that I know the answers to. For example, if I'm going to go to a mechanic, I don't know much about cars, right? But I know a little bit about where to put the oil. You know, I might know a little bit about like how the battery works. I'm better off asking my mechanic about those things because I have some ability to see whether what they're telling me is accurate or not. If I ask them about something that I know nothing about, they could tell me anything. How would I know? It's always good to ask something that you have some idea about. I think it's also important to understand what they believe in. And so we've run into problems sometimes where we've used a vendor where they're really optimized for profit, right? They want to charge for every little thing. They're really trying to make the most money that they can. And what we would prefer is a company that's optimized about providing great service and using that as a way to be profitable. So it's important to know what sort of company you're dealing with and what sort of principles they have. How long have they been around? Kind of helps to understand like the range of experience that they have and whether they're going to have dealt with a whole lot of situations that you might have to face. Can they support you if you grow? You don't want to necessarily be dealing with someone who's great if you've got like 2 employees or you're turning over like 100 grand, but when you get to 500 grand, they no longer know what to do. And big one is how generous are they with their time and information? So always when you're dealing particularly with professional services, the most attention that you get is at the beginning, right? When they're pitching for your business, that's when they're going to give you the most attention. And if it's not enough, if they're not patient with you, it's only going to get worse. And this took us a while to work out, but it's tempting sometimes to pick a company because of the big names that they've dealt with. Oh, these guys did this thing for Google. They did this thing for IBM. But we're not IBM. The problems that we have nothing to do with the problems that IBM have. If they've helped a company that's like us, that's actually really helpful. Sometimes they'll know the problems that we're going to experience that we haven't worked out yet. So I think it's really a good idea to check if there are companies that have helped people similar to you. And that is, this is the last slide. Okay, so when we talk about the future, we're always trying to use our values to guide us in terms of where we're going, but here are some of the things that we're thinking about and trying to work on over the next 6 months or so. If anyone has any knowledge they want to share or experiences, I'd really love it if you'd come up and grab us afterwards. We're trying to do a salary calculator about localization. We're concerned about expense reimbursements and how we do that well. We're going to gross up allowances in some countries. It's proving a little complicated. We're trying to formulate a parental leave policy. You can see here I've called it a maternity leave policy, which shows that we're right at the beginning in terms of understanding how to accommodate that. We now realize that it's actually parental leave because we have a whole range of people. And company credit cards. So we'd love to be able to send people money sometimes to buy a piece of equipment or buy themselves lunch. We're having a little bit of trouble organising that. So they're all the things that are in our future. And now we have time for questions.